Some people hide their power behind badges, others behind silence. On a quiet road in Georgia, two officers pulled over a black woman driving alone. They expected submission. No flashing ID, no security detail. Just a calm woman with no badge in sight. But Alana Brooks wasn't just any driver. They laughed as they planted something in her trunk, then arrested her under false charges, dragging her into the station like it was just another day on the job. They didn't realize what they'd done, because within hours their world would flip upside down. Alana wasn't just another woman on the road. She was the director of the DEA, and in trying to frame her, they accidentally tore open the very system that had shielded them for years. Before we dive deeper, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you're into true stories that don't just shock. They change the way you see the world. That morning, the Georgia backroads were quiet. Mist clung low over the trees, and the sky hadn't fully woken yet. Alana drove a silver sedan, window slightly down, letting in the scent of wet pine and fresh asphalt from the night's rain. No sirens, no escort, no badge, just jeans, a hoodie, and a quiet weekend behind her. 3 days with family, homework at the kitchen table, peach cobbler made from scratch, card games and laughter that made her forget she carried a title back in D.C. For a few days, she wasn't a federal official. She was just Aunt Alana, dancing in socks and folding laundry. As she drove, soul music drifted softly through the speakers, Marvin Gaye humming low under her thoughts. No calls, no alerts, just the slow calm of a Sunday fading into Monday. Then she noticed it, the subtle reflection of a police cruiser in her rearview mirror. Too close, too quiet. At first, she thought they'd pass, just another patrol out on a sleepy highway. But they didn't. They matched her speed, waited. She signaled to let them around, but they stayed behind her. When the lights finally flicked on, they weren't urgent, just calm, flashing blue and red, a quiet demand. She pulled over, both hands on the wheel, straight posture, eyes forward. This wasn't her first time, but every time carried risk. One officer came to her window, the other circled to the back, watching silently. The one at the window knocked twice, confident, expecting instant obedience. She lowered the glass halfway. "Good morning, officer. May I ask why I'm being stopped?" No answer at first, just a slow scan of her face, then her hands. His voice was dry, wrapped in forced politeness. "Routine patrol. You were drifting a little." "I wasn't aware of that," she said, "but I'll get you what you need." She moved carefully, no sudden motions. Glove box, registration, wallet. Every move was controlled, practiced, the kind of care you learn not from fear, but from experience. The second officer stepped in closer now, arms crossed, eyes locked on the car's interior. The first one looked at her license, something in his expression tightening. "You visiting family?" he asked, voice still casual. Alana nodded, calm, composed. He held the ID too long, then nodded to his partner, popped the trunk. She didn't move. "Is that a request or a lawful order?" she asked, her voice still even, but firmer now. One hand hovered near the baton, the other slowly drifting toward his holster. "You got anything back there we need to be concerned about?" the officer asked, his tone dripping with staged suspicion. "I know exactly what's in my trunk," Alana said evenly, "and I'd like to understand the legal basis for this search." "We don't need to argue," the older officer replied, still clutching her ID. "You can make this easy, or not." There was a long pause. Then, with a soft click, Alana pressed the trunk release. The younger officer headed toward the back of the car, vanishing from view. Alana stayed still, eyes forward, body steady. She'd done nothing wrong, but she knew how quickly power can twist silence. Moments later, he returned, holding a clear plastic bag in the air like a prize. Inside, a pale powder. "Well, look at that," he said, voice smug. "Guess you forgot something." Alana didn't flinch. "That wasn't in my car. You sure about that?" "I'm sure." The older cop leaned closer, his voice dropping. "You're not in DC anymore. Keep talking, and this gets a lot more difficult for you." Alana slowly turned to him, gaze unwavering. "I know my rights," she said firmly, "and I'm invoking them. I do not consent to this search. I want legal counsel, and that evidence was not in my trunk. It was planted." He raised a brow, the edge of his mouth curling in condescension. "Now she wants a lawyer," he muttered, glancing at his partner. "You hear that, Trent?" Trent chuckled, a sharp, empty sound. "Guilty ones always talk the most. I'm not guilty," Alana replied calmly. "And if either of you believed in the legitimacy of this stop, you wouldn't need sarcasm to cover your tracks. You both know this is unlawful." The older officer stepped in, reducing the space between them. "That tone," he said, jaw tightening, eyes narrowing. "People out here learn quick. Badge means follow directions." But Alana didn't move, didn't blink. Her hands remained calmly on the wheel. "Then follow your own department's protocol," she said. "Call your supervisor. Any further action without one is a violation." For a second, the air cracked with tension. Then slowly he stepped back, not in compliance, but in calculation. "Step out of the car," he ordered, his voice stripped of politeness. "No," she said clearly. "Not until a supervisor is present. You have no cause, and you're holding fabricated evidence." That was when they dropped the act. The door flew open. The officer reached in, unlocking it manually, and yanked her out by the arm with force that said everything about intent. Trent moved in fast, unbuckling her seatbelt and hauling her upright in one harsh motion. No explanation, no rights read, no chain of evidence observed. Just muscle memory and abuse dressed in uniform. Her feet hit the asphalt hard. Her wrists were twisted behind her and cuffed tighter than needed, intentionally, not for safety, but for pain. Still, Alana kept her head high, her posture straight. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She named what was happening. "This is unlawful," she said steadily. "I followed every instruction. I've made no threats, and what you claim to have found was not in my possession. I am requesting badge numbers and your supervisor's name." They ignored her. They walked her to the cruiser like a prop in a routine scene they'd rehearsed before. Around them, cars slowed, people glanced, thinking they were seeing just another traffic arrest. They had no idea who she was. That anonymity worked in the officer's favor, for now. The younger cop opened the back door. She got in on her own. No fight, no struggle, just quiet dignity. The cuffs dug into her back as she sat stiffly in the molded plastic seat. Then the door closed behind her with a dull, heavy thud. It didn't echo. It settled like smoke. Through the window, she watched the officers move toward the front. The older one picked up his radio. "Unit 62, we're 10 to 15. Female suspect, possession, resisting search." A calm report, entirely false. No real name, no field test, no resistance. Just a story entered into the system. And sometimes, that's all it takes for injustice to gain ground, when silence gets written into the record as truth. They didn't talk much on the way to the station. The silence wasn't awkward. It was intentional, controlled. The only sounds were the soft hiss of tires over wet pavement and the occasional static from the police radio. Alana didn't ask questions. She didn't protest. Her stillness wasn't fear, it was focus. Every second, she was logging details. The officer's sleeve with the small burn mark, the half-peeled registration sticker on the dash, the exact route they took, the timestamp in her mind when things turned hostile. This wasn't just memory, it was testimony, sealed tight behind steady eyes. By the time they pulled into the dim back entrance of the station, Alana already had everything she needed: names, badge numbers, and proof of misconduct. No one else knew what was coming. The older officer opened her door. His grip was no longer smug, just firm, the kind that carries weight, but not explanation. They led her through a scuffed hallway with flickering lights and the stale scent of old coffee and bleach. The booking desk looked like it hadn't changed in a decade. A fan buzzed weakly near the window, and behind the desk sat a tired-looking sergeant. barely lifting his eyes as they approached. "Possession, obstruction," the older officer said flatly, handing over the cuffs. The sergeant gave her a quick once-over, then reached for the keyboard. "Name?" "Alana Brooks." He started typing with one hand, not expecting anything more than a routine name in a long line of early morning bookings. But then something changed. His brow furrowed, his fingers froze, his posture shifted, just barely, but enough. Alana saw it. He typed again, faster now, checking something. Then the monitor loaded a different screen, something with a black header and a federal seal. And in that moment, he paled. He wasn't looking at a regular record. He was staring at clearance levels. "Hold on," he muttered, to no one in particular. He looked up again. Really looked this time, not at her clothes, at her, the way she carried herself, the way she hadn't raised her voice once, hadn't begged or pleaded, hadn't even looked confused. She didn't act like someone trapped. She acted like someone watching. "You said Brooks?" he asked. "Yes," she said calmly. The sergeant's hand moved toward the phone. He dialed an internal number, speaking low, glancing at her between words. His expression was no longer neutral. It was tight, unsettled. "What's the issue?" the older officer asked, voice tinged with rising irritation. The sergeant didn't answer. He hung up the phone and turned sharply. "Both of you, conference room, now." The officers hesitated. Trent had just walked in, expecting a quick drop-off, maybe even a joke or a pat on the back. Instead, he got silence and a direct order. "What's going on?" he asked. "Do it!" the sergeant snapped. Sharper now. No more ambiguity. They went. Alana watched them walk away, tension bleeding into their steps, eyes flicking back toward her. They could feel it now, the weight shifting in the room, the power tipping. The door shut behind them. The sergeant came back and reached for her cuffs. His hands were shaking. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I need your phone." She handed it over without a word. "We're logging it as personal property. It'll be returned." "I'd like to make a call." He nodded. Then he typed again. Her name. One more entry. The system pinged. A red alert lit up the screen. Loud, sharp. An unfamiliar chime echoed, something this local station almost never hears. Then her photo appeared, but not a license photo, not a mugshot, a formal, high-security federal portrait, and under it a banner in bold letters. Brooks Alana, Director, Drug Enforcement Administration, Access Level 5, Immediate Federal Contact Required. The sergeant froze, his mouth opened slightly, 1,000 unspoken regrets behind his eyes. "Ma'am," he stammered, We didn't know." "I know," Alana said, her voice like cold steel. "But now that you do, you're going to do more than just apologize." She stepped forward, calm, controlled, unshaken. "Secure this building. Freeze every internal system. I want logs pulled, communications locked down, and get your supervisor, now. I want all surveillance footage sealed. No one touches the access logs. Lock down every keycard in this building and secure your evidence intake desk," Alana said, her voice cutting clean through the room. "As of now, this entire precinct is under federal control. I'm initiating an internal investigation under DEA authority. I need a secure line. 60 seconds. "Yes, Director?" the sergeant replied, the title catching awkwardly in his throat as he scrambled for the nearest phone. But Alana wasn't waiting for anyone. She crossed the room, heading straight for the secure terminal, one she knew was hardwired into federal systems. Her fingers moved fast, entering override codes from memory. Behind her, the silence was absolute. Then came a voice over the encrypted line. "Director Brooks?" "Agent Salgado. I've been detained by 2 local officers. False charges. I'm initiating full lockdown. I need a response team. Security, data extraction, and a chain of evidence review." "Are you safe?" "I'm uninjured." The officers vanished the moment my credentials were confirmed. They were gone before the system pinged. This was no accident. Pause. "The drugs they tried to pin on me were sealed, federal seals. I believe they accessed evidence from a DEA seizure, possibly Miami. I need full lockdown now." "Understood." Extraction team inbound. ETA 40 minutes. Alana ended the call. She turned to the sergeant. Her words were fast and sharp. Get every exit monitored. I want all cruiser logs from the last 3 hours reviewed. Pull the past 15 minutes of internal video and save it to external backup, untouched. The sergeant moved, then hesitated. Their cruiser, it's not out front. Alana didn't blink. Then find it. Check every parking lot. They didn't walk away. That vehicle either swapped plates or was dumped. Flag it under DEA jurisdiction. Launch an internal alert, now. The radio in his hand crackled to life as he issued the order, his voice no longer calm, but urgent. Somewhere in the building, a short siren chirped, a signal reserved only for federal lockdown. Across the county, every officer would now know this building wasn't just under review. It was under federal hold. The ripple had begun. Files thought long buried would resurface. Cabinets once left untouched would be cracked open. No one was off limits now. Alana stood at the center of it all. No cuffs, no doubt, no more silence. They hadn't known who she was when they stopped her, but they knew now. And whoever gave those officers access to federally sealed evidence, whoever signed off on pulling cartel-grade narcotics out of lockup, whoever thought she was just another name, was about to watch their name get torn apart. The evidence room was colder than expected, and not just because of the AC. A storage tech in his 60s stood awkwardly by a steel rack, his badge faded, polo shirt hanging loose. He handed a clipboard to Agent Salgado, who had arrived with the first wave of the DEA response team, just 23 minutes after Alana's call. Salgado flipped through the paperwork. The signature on the chain of custody form didn't match any of the arrest documentation. There was no inventory number, no internal evidence tag. Instead, a federal trace code, and not just any code. It was linked to Operation Lancer, a multi-agency sting that had taken down a cartel network 2 months earlier in Miami. Over 400 kilos seized. The entire shipment had been flown to a secure DEA facility in Virginia, where it had been under 24/7 surveillance, or so they thought. Alana scanned the form. The seal was real. The field test pack was real. But the fact that it had shown up in her trunk, on a back road in Georgia, in the hands of 2 small-town officers with 0 clearance, that meant something far bigger had gone wrong. This wasn't contraband. This was bait. Her expression didn't change, but when she spoke, the room froze. This was never in their custody. It was never supposed to leave our vault. Someone bypassed multiple layers of internal security and altered logging data to cover their tracks. This wasn't a solo breach. Salgado nodded, eyes dark. They had access. They had time. And they knew no one would question it, because they weren't expecting anyone like you to be pulled over. Alana handed the clipboard back to the technician. This entire facility is now a federal crime scene. Lock every room, secure every cabinet, and bring me a full manifest of every logged item from the last 30 days. If even one item is missing, Alana said quietly, I want to know when and who moved it. The technician swallowed hard, nodded, and stepped away to make a hushed call. Outside the evidence room, tension seeped through the precinct like oil under a locked door. The same officers who had chuckled during her arrest now stood frozen at their desks, suddenly quieter, suddenly glued to their phones. There'd been no official announcement, but the shift was undeniable. Truth had entered the building, and it didn't need a microphone. You could see it in darting glances, in clenched jaws, in silence where noise used to be. Internal Affairs arrived less than an hour later. Leading them was Captain Naomi Kersey, a woman known for saying very little and understanding everything. She didn't bother with introductions. Her team fanned out, seizing terminals, pulling digital logs, questioning everyone from patrol to admin, and trailing just behind her, a quiet assistant from the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. In the corner of the room, the local police chief, Walter Creel, attempted damage control. A man with a long face and thinning hair combed over like authority could be styled into place. He approached Alana near the operations board, trying for a mix of concern and control. Director Brooks, he said, extending a hand she didn't take. There's been some Misunderstanding. Maddox and Calloway are solid guys. We run a tight ship here. Alana studied him with calm intensity. You're telling me you had no idea 2 of your officers accessed high-level narcotics from a federal seizure, used it to stage an arrest, and disappeared before you even knew my name? Creel hesitated. His mouth opened, then closed. They never gave me a reason to doubt them, he finally muttered. They've been with us for years. Good records, commendations. Too good, Agent Salgado cut in, stepping beside Alana. He held up a file. Their stops follow a pattern, almost always black or Latino drivers, rural roads, no dash cam, no body cam. Complaints filed, but never followed up. Creel rubbed the back of his neck, sweat beading near his collar. Look, I'm not saying there weren't lapses. We're stretched thin. Sometimes things fall through the cracks. No, Alana said, stepping closer. Not aggressive, but precise. What's falling through isn't protocol, it's trust. And if you didn't know what they were doing, then either they were smarter than you, or you were too comfortable to look. I need to know which. Before he could answer, Salgado's phone buzzed. He answered quickly, listened, then walked back, phone raised just enough for Alana to see. A grainy, still image from a convenience store camera. Maddox and Calloway exiting their cruiser, stepping into the back seat of a black SUV. The plates had already been traced. Registered to a man named Marcus Velt. Salgado frowned. That name ring a bell? Alana's face tightened. It should. Why? Because Marcus Velt was a narcotics officer out of Arizona. He died in a car fire over a year ago. Apparently not, Salgado said grimly. He's the one who picked them up. Alana stared at the image, noting the timestamp, then turned to Naomi, who had just finished locking down the first round of personnel logs. Get me everything on Velt, she said. If he faked his death, he didn't do it alone. And if he's resurfaced now, this isn't just 2 rogue officers. It's a network. Naomi's expression, usually unreadable, hardened. Understood. Salgado folded his arms. This wasn't random. They knew what they were pulling. They knew where it came from. They knew how to make it disappear. And now we know someone's helping them erase trails, even federal ones. Alana nodded. Then we're not just chasing the suspects, she said. We follow the silence. The next morning, in the secured conference room at Pine Bluff County Precinct, every light buzzed faintly above a table now buried in case files, digital logs, and arrest records. On the wall-mounted screen, a map of the Tri-County region pulsed with red markers. 14 months of traffic stops by Maddox and Calloway. Over 50 stops. At least 32 led to charges. Almost all involved black or Latino individuals. Nearly none included body cam footage. Alana stood with her arms crossed as Agent Julia Caney, the tech analyst brought in by Salgado, cycled through the data. Each pin lit up with names, dates, and charges. Possession, intent to distribute, resisting arrest. All familiar, all disturbingly consistent. The pattern wasn't just suspicious. It was systemic. The patterns weren't just suspicious anymore. They were calculated. They knew exactly where to hunt, Julia said, her voice clipped sharp. Most stops were made just outside urban zones, places without dash cams, where they could claim erratic driving and no one would question it. The language across reports, nearly identical. No follow-ups, no internal reviews, just signatures and silence. Alana walked toward the digital map, pointing to a blinking pin in the upper left. This one's different. What is it? Julia clicked. A file opened. Jordan Lamar, age 22, stopped for failing to signal. Found dead 2 hours after booking. Cause, suicide. The air shifted. Bring me everything, Alana said. 10 minutes later, the file spread out on the table. Sparse, incomplete, but damning. Jordan had no record. He had called his mother from holding, scared but coherent. 90 minutes later, they claimed they found him hanging from a torn bedsheet. No photos of the cell, no witness statements, no footage of the arrest. Just enough paperwork to quietly close a case. Salgado frowned, flipping through the intake forms. No suicide watch, no psychological evaluation, no supervisor signature. Naomi, arms crossed at the edge of the room, finally said it aloud. They killed him. Alana flipped the booking form. Blank. Where's the signature? Julia leaned in. Electronically signed, by Maddox. Alana didn't blink. She turned to her assistant. Pull every death in custody tied to this precinct. Look for missing footage. Cross-reference with phone logs. Any call from Holding to a family member that went undocumented, flag it. Julia hesitated. There's more. She opened a folder titled Lamar Bystander Video and turned her laptop toward Alana. It was shaky footage, shot from a car across the street, uploaded to a small community Facebook group, never submitted as evidence. The police had never mentioned it. No one had followed up, but the video was clear. Jordan Lamar stood beside his vehicle, hands up. Maddox yanked him by the collar. The mic didn't catch the words, but the posture said everything. He wasn't resisting. He was being handled. Calloway showed up seconds later, pushed Jordan into the cruiser with a knee, like it was muscle memory, routine, casual. Alana hovered her hand over the pause button. How was this missed? It wasn't, Julia answered. It was buried. The account that posted it? Flagged. Deleted 3 weeks later. The only reason we even have this copy is because a local rights group archived it during a routine data sweep. Otherwise, it'd be gone, Naomi added, voice steady. Autopsy said ligature marks, but no signs of physical restraint. Another contradiction. They didn't expect anyone to compare notes. They knew how to write it just clean enough to slide past oversight, Salgado muttered. Alana stood slowly, her hands pressed on the table, scanning the names, reports, red pins, and invisible patterns staring back at her. This isn't misconduct, she said. It's structured abuse of power. They didn't just target people, they hunted them. This was designed. Julia opened another file. A new cluster of cases, same officers, same language. But this time, there was a twist. Evidence was listed, but never submitted. Some of the drugs were logged, others vanished. One report mentioned an entire kilo of unmarked powder from a routine stop. But there's no record of that kilo in evidence storage. Alana's eyes met Salgado's. He was already heading for the door. If that product disappeared, he said, it was either resold or used in another setup. Then trace it, Alana ordered. Every single item logged by Maddox or Calloway in the past year. Double verify it, right now. Salgado nodded without a word. Alana turned to Naomi. Reopen Jordan Lamar's file. File the motion with the Department of Justice and the Civil Rights Division. If we need to exhume the body, we do it, and subpoena everyone who signed off on that suicide. Naomi didn't blink. I'll file the orders myself. They moved quickly, but with intention, because what they were building now wasn't just a case. It was a foundation, a structure strong enough to expose the system that had allowed this to happen. It wasn't just about Maddox or Calloway. It was about everyone who looked away, everyone who stayed silent, and everyone who helped keep the doors closed while it happened. And those doors? They were about to be kicked open, for good. This wasn't about a few bad cops anymore. It was about the machine behind them, a system that protected, erased, signed off, and stayed silent while lives were dismantled and seized. Evidence moved hand to hand like currency. Alana closed the final file on the table and straightened. From this point on, she said, her voice like steel, every single one of their arrests is treated as a federal investigation. She paused. This wasn't a coincidence. It was an operation. 2 days after they reopened Jordan Lamar's case, a secure message hit Naomi Kersey's encrypted DOJ inbox. No name, no metadata traceable, just a voice, tight, nervous, and real. They've cycled through 5 departments in 10 years, and every time they show up, something goes missing. Major seizures, money, narcotics, documents either vanish or get reclassified. Pine Ridge, Jefferson Parish, Marlowe County, Lorton Heights, same pattern, same cleanup crews. I'm not giving you my name. If they find out I talked, I won't be the next arrest. I'll just be gone. The clip cut off mid-breath. Naomi didn't hesitate. Within 30 minutes, she had verified everything. Maddox and Calloway had transferred between 5 jurisdictions since 2013. Every move followed the same playbook. Within 3 months of their arrival, a major bust would be compromised, evidence rerouted, files edited, or entire logs scrubbed from federal databases. In Marlow County, a $2 million cash seizure and 73 pounds of heroin vanished in transit. No one was charged. Calloway's name appeared, barely legible, misspelled, hidden in a cluster of other signatures. In Pine Ridge, a fentanyl seizure originally listed 6 bricks. Only 2 made it to the lockup. No inquiry. Maddox had only been there 4 weeks. Each incident fit. Too clean, too calculated. Naomi compiled the full report and forwarded it to Alana, along with a note. This isn't a pattern, it's a playbook. That night, as the sun set over the county, the conference room had transformed. One wall was now a digital map. Lines, dates, transfers, every known department, every task force, every signature from Maddox and Calloway, connected in time and space. It wasn't abstract anymore. It was a system. Logistical, coordinated, intentional. Julia Caney entered quietly. "I ran the audits," she said, her tone urgent. "You were right. Dozens of seizure records were edited after logging. Same digital fingerprint. A level 3 DEA override code." Alana turned slowly. "Those codes are encrypted, issued to senior agents only. Who had access?" "That's the problem," Julia said. "The ID used belonged to a DEA analyst who died 6 years ago. His account was deactivated, but someone reactivated it last year through a backdoor reset protocol." Alana's eyes narrowed. "No one flagged that?" "No," Julia said, tapping her tablet. "Because the credentials were run through a hidden internal auditing tool, one meant for emergency corrections, legal transfers, quiet updates." She hesitated. "It's called Zeno." The room fell still. Naomi looked up. "I've heard of it. Legacy infrastructure. Old, pre-cloud." Julia nodded. "Built over a decade ago. It was supposed to be temporary, to help cross-reference evidence between federal task forces, but it was never retired. Just buried, hidden beneath layers of nested protocols. Now it's used as a clearinghouse, a place to rewrite logs, erase tags, shift inventory across systems without triggering alerts." Alana's voice dropped. "And someone's been using it." "To reassign evidence," Julia said. "To move it with federal clearance, signed off by ghost profiles. If we hadn't triggered the system with your ID during booking, it would have stayed hidden." Alana was silent for a long beat. "They used my arrest as a test," she said finally. "They wanted to see how long the system would delay before escalating to federal oversight. That 90-second delay wasn't a glitch. It was intentional." Naomi stepped forward. "Which means someone inside, someone with root-level access, is still active." Alana looked at her, voice flat. "Not just someone who knows Zeno, someone who built it." Salgado stepped into the room with a fresh stack of records. "Pulled your old Lorton Heights task force files," he said, dropping them on the table. "You'll want to see this." He flipped open a folder and pointed to a case summary from 2015, a large cocaine seizure filed under a long-defunct operation called Hold Back, a joint task force, DEA, local units, and Border Patrol, all assigned to monitor rural cartel routes feeding secondary cities. Maddox and Calloway were listed as tactical advisors. But what the file didn't say, what Salgado had confirmed through outside logs, was that Operation Holdback was shut down quietly a year later. Internal corruption, high-ranking officers resigned, and Maddox and Calloway, they weren't named. They just transferred. Again, on the final page of the folder, Agent Marcus Velt, listed as Systems Liaison. Alana stared at the name. The same man now confirmed alive, who had picked up her arresting officers 2 days earlier, a man once declared dead. "They built this network," she said quietly, "through a program we buried, and a system we forgot, and they're still using it, because it was never designed to shut down, only to disappear." Naomi exhaled, calm but focused. "Then we do what no one else would. We drag it into the light." Alana said nothing. She just turned back to the access terminal. One word flashed at the top of the screen: Zeno. He arrived without a name. No camera, no notes, no trace. He passed 2 checkpoints under a fake ID and asked for just 2 people. Alana and Naomi, alone. He looked older than his 59 years. Not in body, but in spirit, like someone who had carried too many secrets too long. His name was William Fry, a retired sergeant, once part of a federal task force in El Paso during the height of cartel activity. His career ended in 2015. A medical discharge, a classified file, a silence bought and paid for. When he sat down across from them, it wasn't with the tight-lipped defiance they were used to. It was grief. "You're looking in the wrong place," he said, voice rough from time or guilt. "You think you're chasing dirty cops, a rogue unit, but what you're really chasing is a leftover, a remnant." Naomi leaned forward slightly. "A remnant of what?" Frey slid a folder across the table. Old field reports, no agency marks, yellowed paper, scribbled notes in the margins. "Operation Spire," he said, later renamed Holdback. It started as a joint task force, DEA customs, fusion teams, black budget stuff. He paused. "We weren't making arrests. We were cleaning them up. Raids that went wrong, evidence that didn't align, seizures that were too big. We fixed it," Frey said. "We corrected the narrative. Sometimes that meant shifting product into false inventories. Sometimes it meant rerouting suspects into unmarked transports. Sometimes the footage just disappeared." Alana spoke softly. "You handled evidence?" Frey gave a humorless laugh. "Number, we handled reputation. Our job was to make the mess look clean, even if we had to burn everything to do it." Naomi pressed. "And how did that evolve into the product being resold?" Frey's expression darkened. "At first, it wasn't direct, just a missing crate here or there. Then someone realized if no one was asking questions, then someone could profit. Over time, the cover-up stopped being about saving careers. They became the point." "Maddox, Calloway?" Alana asked. "Last wave," Frey said. "Brought in right before Holdback collapsed. But when it ended, they didn't leave. They went underground, built their own model, used what they learned. How to erase logs, how to bypass audits, how to move product under the shield of a badge." Alana's tone sharpened. "Were they acting alone?" Frey shook his head. "No one ever acts alone. You need clearance, access, someone to wipe the system when a mistake happens." He paused. "And that's where Zeno came in." The room tensed. Naomi asked what they were both thinking. "Is Zeno a person or a system?" Frey leaned back, exhaled. "Both. Originally, it was just a task signature, an internal clearance layer, used when product needed to be held for intelligence operations. But somewhere along the line, someone turned it into a ghost. Scripts were written, backdoors embedded. Zeno became more than a signature. It became an identity, one that could rewrite logs, erase timestamps, reassign evidence, without a trace, and no one knew it existed. It was never just corruption, it was infrastructure. The system had started as a joke. If evidence vanished, Zeno took it. They used to laugh, but over time, that name, Zeno, stopped being sarcasm. It became real. A placeholder system for classified intel turned into a mask for moving product, Alana said, almost to herself. Frey nodded. They got good at it. Too good. At some point, even the cartels realized it was safer to let them handle distribution. Less mess, less blood, faster deliveries. Naomi leaned forward. Who ran it? Frey looked down, then quietly. No one, or everyone. That's the problem. Once the door opened, anyone with a key could walk through. Alana stood, pacing once, then turning back to the table. You're giving us access. I'm giving you a chance to shut down what we never had the courage to end, Frey said. But you have to understand, this isn't just a ghost network. It's a machine, and it feeds on silence. His voice dropped. People who got too close, they vanished, or they were labeled unstable. One agent who filed a complaint over a fake Zeno clearance was institutionalized in under 2 months. No hearing, no warning. No one spoke. Then Frey stood. I'll disappear after this. Don't send protection. I've carried enough of this already. He reached for his coat. But if you're serious, don't just arrest men. Kill the system. He left the room, and for a moment, everything stopped. Then Naomi turned. You believe him? I believe the pieces fit, Alana said, and that's enough. Salgado stepped in, holding a fresh intel brief. We traced a burner phone linked to Maddox, he said. Pinged from Louisiana, then bounced south. Last signal landed in Mexico. He paused. Word is he's back, and they're setting up a new route. Alana's tone didn't change. Then we find them, before the next shipment moves. No more chasing shadows, no more reacting. From now on, every missing kilo is an active threat. Every erased log is a hostile action. We hunt them using their playbook. Naomi gave a slow, steady nod. Salgado added one more thing. There's someone else, a former analyst, flagged Zeno years ago, before anyone admitted it even existed. She was forced out, never filed whistleblower status, said she didn't trust the system, but she'll talk to you, off record, no one else. Alana's response was quiet, but firm. Set it up. Within the hour, her terms. The cafe had no sign, just a faded awning, a single bell on the door, no posted hours. Inside, it smelled like old cinnamon and burnt coffee. A ceiling fan spun lazily overhead, like even the air was trying not to be noticed. Alana sat in the far booth, still, alert, calm. No gun, no badge, but no fear either. When the woman entered, she didn't hesitate. Gray coat, black backpack. She sat across from Alana without a word and slid a small USB drive onto the table. Karen Dax, she said, former systems analyst, DEA Cyber Division, terminated 3 years ago. Official reason, mishandling sensitive data. Real reason, I flagged something that scared people with corner offices. Alana nodded once. Zeno. Karen gave a tired smile. You figured out the name. That's already more than most. But you haven't figured out what it is. She leaned in, voice low. I've heard it called a ghost ID, a script layer, a myth to clean dirty records. It's more than that. Alana didn't speak. She listened. Zeno started as a lattice, a passive back-end system built after September 11th. It was supposed to quietly observe DEA, customs, and a few select intel units. It had full clearance because it wasn't designed to act, only to mirror. Karen's tone hardened. But someone rewrote it. Embedded execution commands. They opened tunnels, ones that could edit logs, rewrite timestamps, reassign identities. She picked up the USB drive. If a kilo was seized in Texas, Zeno could make it look like it was seized in Phoenix. Same weight, same label, just different story. She leaned back. It didn't change reality. It changed the paperwork. And in federal systems, paperwork is reality. Alana stared at the drive on the table, and for the first time, she didn't just see a tool. She saw a weapon, one that had been built for silence. And now, finally, someone was willing to use it to speak. Alana leaned in. Why wasn't this flagged sooner? I did flag it, Karen replied flatly. That's why I got fired. She reached into her bag and pulled out a slim, black folder, unmarked, laminated, sealed with string. Inside, 3 pages, clean, unassuming. One of them carried a signature Alana instantly recognized. Her own. Karen's voice softened. I don't expect you to remember every document you signed your first week. Most directors don't. But buried inside the onboarding approvals was something called a digital persistence order. It quietly reactivated several legacy systems. She pointed to the 3rd line. Zeno was one of them. Alana stared at her own initials. The date matched her first week in office. Karen didn't gloat. She wasn't angry. She just looked tired. They've been using your clearance for nearly a year, she said. Every staged arrest, every rerouted seizure, every missing witness. They did it all under your name. There was no panic in Alana's face. No shame, only clarity. They baited me, she said. Planted the drugs, waited to see if the system would react. When it didn't, they knew Zeno was still alive. And when it finally did, they disappeared, because they knew someone was watching again. Karen nodded slowly. They used you to test the system's blind spots. Alana closed the folder, her fingertips resting on the page with her own signature. I'm not here to protect a title, she said. I'm here to end this. Karen held her gaze. Then you'll need to burn the root, not just the branches. This thing isn't hiding anymore. It's institutional, and that means it's protected. Alana stood, placing the folder and USB in her bag. Then let's make it unprotected. She walked out calmly, but what she carried now wasn't paper. It was weight. There was no room left for hesitation. Zeno wasn't a bug in the system. It was the system, buried beneath layers of clearance and protected by bureaucracy, invisible to daylight but everywhere underneath. That night, after briefing Naomi and Salgado, Alana headed to her car, parked beneath the federal building. It was quiet in the garage, just the echo of her steps and the low hum of fluorescent lights. She moved with the ease of habit, key in hand, eyes sweeping the area. But something was off, barely visible, a shift in the way her windshield wipers sat, a subtle lift in the hood that hadn't been there that morning. She stopped, circled slowly, checked her reflection against the polished concrete. That's when she saw it. A wire, thin, almost invisible, threaded from behind the wheel well, tucked under the body panel. She didn't hesitate. Security swept the vehicle in under 10 minutes. It wasn't a bomb. It was worse. A hardwired GPS relay embedded in her ignition. Real-time tracking. Remote access to the engine. Enough to stall her vehicle in transit or worse. They called it surveillance-enhanced sabotage. But it wasn't the hardware that chilled her. It was the note behind her passenger visor, printed in plain black letters. "Go home, Director, or someone else won't." Alana folded the note without emotion, slid it into her jacket. She didn't need to ask who someone else meant. An hour later, her niece's home was under full federal protection. Plainclothes agents were embedded in the neighborhood. Encrypted channels rerouted all communications. No panic, no warning, just silent action. Alana didn't flinch. She didn't pause. She went back to work. By dawn, everything had shifted. The task force wasn't investigating anymore. They were pursuing. With Karen's decrypted files and Naomi's audits as the backbone, Alana launched a multi-state sting operation, one designed to hit Zeno at the source. 4 cities, 4 silent strikes: Phoenix, Baton Rouge, Tampa, Bakersfield, each identified as a past Zeno node, places where false inventory had once moved under ghost task forces. No press, no headlines, only precision. In Phoenix, a DEA storage facility, reported as destroyed in a fire back in 2018, was found fully operational, registered under a private logistics shell company in Delaware. Inside, 6 sealed crates, each marked with original DEA tracking codes. Each one, evidence that was never supposed to exist. They thought the system would protect them forever, but Alana had stopped asking permission. And she wasn't just tearing down the walls. She was pulling the entire foundation into the light. The warehouse in Phoenix had been listed as destroyed. But when agents got inside, the dust hadn't even settled. The crates were still stacked, DEA seals still intact. But the men who operated it? Gone. No alarms, no resistance, only fresh tire marks near the loading dock, and a single desk drawer left hanging open, as if someone had walked out mid-sentence. In Baton Rouge, federal agents raided a trailer yard suspected of being a transfer hub, but what they found was silence. The trailers had been stripped. The office trailer was scorched from the inside out, and under a warped floorboard, a hidden safe. Inside, shredded, redacted, disjointed federal case files. One of them, Jordan Lamar's arrest record, printed twice with 2 different timestamps. In Tampa, a safe house with past links to Operation Holdback was freshly vacated, still warm bedding, coffee grounds in the sink. But behind a false wall, a server remained untouched. What it held, fragments of encrypted messages routed through Zeno aliases. One label stood out, Velt. And in Bakersfield, a man matching Calloway's description was seen boarding a crop duster at a long-abandoned airstrip. By the time the team arrived, the sky was empty. The manifest was blank. Each operation came close, and each time, someone vanished. Witnesses went silent. Phones disconnected. Security cameras conveniently lost power. That night, Alana and Salgado stood before the wall. Pins, strings, maps, faces, all connected by lines drawn in ink that still felt too thin. "We're chasing smoke," Salgado muttered. "No," Alana said, voice low. "We're chasing the wind behind the smoke. That's where the fire hides." She said nothing of the GPS wire in her car, nothing of the note left under her visor, nothing of her niece now under federal protection. Instead, she spoke of the next phase. Zeno survives because it never stays still. We stop waiting. We make them react. Naomi entered, her face grave. She handed Alana a red folder, thin but heavy with implication. Inside, a classified field alert. One of their own was missing. Special Agent Lucas Wren, a communications analyst tracking signal chains linked to Zeno, had gone dark. Last known ping, Lorton Heights. His car had been found burned off a logging road. No struggle, no distress call, just a torn ID. And a message typed cleanly on white paper. One more echo and the system dies with him. Alana stared at the note, didn't flinch, didn't speak. She folded it once, slid it into her coat, then looked at Naomi and Salgado. They're not just protecting Zeno anymore. They're weaponizing it. Naomi nodded grimly. We need to hit them now, not after another person disappears. We find the core, we collapse it. Alana didn't hesitate. We intercept the next shipment. We bleed their route dry. At the kill zone, a narrow stretch of canyon choked by desert and rock, the convoy moved forward, unaware. A rattlesnake hissed near the ridge as the dust kicked up behind the lead truck. In the rear SUV, one of the gunmen shifted uneasily. Something feels off, he muttered. The driver shrugged. You say that every time we hit West Texas. Nah, the gunman said, tightening his grip on the SMG. This ain't nerves. This is silence. 30 seconds later, silence turned to fire. The second-to-last vehicle shredded its tires on a buried spike strip, spinning sideways in a plume of dirt and smoke. The rear SUV slammed the brakes. Flashbangs exploded from the ridge above, disorienting the guards inside. Go! Alana's voice cut through comms like a blade. Teams move now. Breach and flank. From both sides of the ridge, federal agents in tactical black surged down the rocks, boots slamming, ropes snapping, muzzle flashes cutting through dust. The gunmen barely had time to raise their weapons. The lead truck opened fire, wild and wide, but the agents moved in formation, weaving through haze, shadows, and cover. Alana didn't stay behind. She moved with the breach team, fast, focused, precise. Rifle up, steps sharp, breath even. A gunman rounded the cargo truck, weapon raised, eyes wide. Alana dropped him with a single burst to the vest. Before he hit the ground, she was on him, elbow to throat, rifle yanked free, knee into sternum. He collapsed. He wasn't getting up. From the right, "Two moving, right side!" Naomi shouted, and the operation wasn't over. But Zeno had just lost its silence. "On it!" Salgado said over comms. The rear SUV door burst open. Two men jumped out, one with a sawed-off shotgun, the other gripping a baton. The baton came first. He lunged at Alana, fast, wide swing. She sidestepped, caught his wrist midair, twisted, crack, and drove him headfirst into the cargo truck's steel corner. He dropped like a stone. The second man leveled the shotgun. Alana ducked low, shoulder first, tackling his legs from underneath. He fired wide, dust, chaos. She came up hard, slammed the rifle butt into the side of his head. Outside, Salgado's voice echoed in the comms. Left side clear, intercepting drivers, watch for runners. One of them bolted, young, terrified, a pistol shaking in his hand. Alana chased, not firing, not yet. She caught him in the sand, tackled him hard, both rolling, coughing, fists flying. A wild swing clipped her cheek, blood. She blocked, 1, 2, then drove her palm into his nose, a crack sharp enough to silence everything. He screamed. She dropped a knee to his chest and zip-tied his wrists behind his back. You're done. That's when it came. Naomi's voice over comms, sharp and fast. Director, visual confirmation, Maddox and Callaway, East Ridge, behind the wrecked SUV, flanking toward the dry gulch. Alana's eyes narrowed. They're trying to vanish again. She grabbed her rifle, sprinted. Salgado and Herculsi. Gunfire behind them. A distraction. They're trying to draw us off, Salgado shouted. Let them try. Alana didn't stop. The gulch dropped sharply, a dry scar in the desert earth. Maddox and Callaway moved like wolves, sidearms drawn, practiced, fast. They turned. Didn't expect her to charge head-on. Should have stayed behind your desk, Maddox growled, raising his pistol. But Alana fired first. A clean shot, grazing his shoulder, the weapon spinning from his hand. Callaway roared, charging. She met him at full speed, slamming him into the rocky wall. His fist slammed into her ribs. Pain. She twisted, elbowed his throat. He gasped, then countered with an uppercut that rocked her head back. Salgado tackled Maddox, fists flying, dust, fury. Maddox was wild, but Salgado was trained and angry. He drove a knee into Maddox's thigh, elbowed his head, pressed him flat to the ground with his forearm. "Try planning something now, you coward." Maddox spat blood. "You're too late." Alana and Calloway were locked in a brutal rhythm. Another swing, another dodge. Then she struck. A boot to the shin, he faltered. And then the headbutt. It landed hard. Calloway screamed, blood gushing. Alana flipped him, wrenched his arm behind his back, slammed him into the dirt. "You should have stayed buried," Calloway hissed. Alana tightened the zip ties. "You're not dying today. You're going to rot." Salgado dragged Maddox upright. "You just lost your shadow," he said. "We've got it all." Maddox laughed through blood. "You have no idea what you're standing on." Alana stood, steadying her breath. "We'll turn over every stone, every precinct, every name. Your network's finished." Calloway struggled in his restraints. "You think this ends with us? You don't even know the depth of it." Alana's voice dropped. "You're not the story anymore. You're evidence." She motioned to her team. Black site, isolation, no contact, no signals, 1 hour. Agents descended, pulling the men away. Salgado exhaled. "That was close." "Too close," Alana muttered. Her ribs ached, her knuckles burned, but her eyes never wavered. "They didn't expect us to come head-on. They always ran. This time, they stood, because they knew something we didn't." Then, Naomi's voice in her earpiece. "Director, we decrypted the manifest from the lead truck. Secondary meeting point listed, not Lisbon. Houston, domestic, 48 hours from now. Marked with Velt's signature." Alana froze. "He's still in country." Or, Naomi said, "He wants us to think he is. And now he wants us to come." Alana looked out over the blinking lights of victory. She didn't smile. Because this wasn't the end. It was an invitation. Inside the federal annex, red lights glowed in silence. The USB they recovered from the mobile command crate was still being decrypted. This wasn't cartel encryption. This wasn't government. It was something custom. Someone who understood the core of DEA systems. Someone who had written directly into the spine. And what they were about to uncover wasn't just code. It was the truth beneath the surface. Someone knew exactly where to hide the truth, so deep that even the agency designed to protect it didn't know it was there. Karen stood at the console, eyes fixed on the code unraveling across the screens. Her face was pale, not from surprise, but from recognition. Beside her, Naomi quietly cross-referenced every file as it decrypted. Alana and Salgado stood in silence behind them. These weren't just old logs. They were dossiers, complete records spanning over a decade. Each folder was labeled by badge number and last known department. Inside, arrest reports, evidence logs, internal memos, transfer sheets, all matching across 6 different precincts. Dozens of officers, most still active. Alana leaned over Karen's shoulder, arms crossed. "How many names?" Karen didn't blink. 73 so far. Naomi exhaled slowly through her nose. "These aren't just dirty cops," she said. "They're co-conspirators. They moved cartel product, filed false reports, and did it all from inside federal task forces." Salgado added, "Which means they had clearance." Karen opened a new folder. That wasn't the worst part. She clicked open a sealed archive, hidden behind multiple levels of clearance, activated by a ghost identity. Its title blinked across the screen. Project Holdback. Alana's voice went cold. "That's one of ours." Naomi's brow furrowed. "That was pre-204. An asset leak protocol, right? Failed. Shut down." Karen didn't answer. She just opened the file. The screen filled with layers of documents. Project overviews, funding charts, internal memos, tactical playbooks. Operation Holdback had been designed to reintroduce seized cartel narcotics back into circulation. Tag them, track them, map distribution from within. High risk, high reward, heavily classified. The program was supposedly dismantled after a failed trial in Florida, when one of the tagged bricks resurfaced, and civilians died. Publicly, it died. Privately, it was mothballed. Karen scrolled deeper. "No," she said, "it was reactivated 5 years ago, through a discretionary line item buried in the National Enforcement Budget, signed off by the previous DEA director." Alana's jaw clenched. He was compromised. Naomi scanned the funding authorizations. No. He thought he was reviving the old model. Controlled leaks, controlled intelligence. He didn't know it had already been hijacked. Salgado cursed under his breath. So they used federal funding to rebuild the system, but this time they didn't trace the drugs. They laundered them. Karen nodded grimly. They flipped the whole structure. It wasn't about infiltration anymore. They became the cartel's most efficient tool, protected by the same clearance we use for counterterrorism ops. No questions, no oversight, no one willing to look into a sealed corridor labeled classified. Alana stared at the top of the screen. One name blinked there, tied to every reactivated server, every erasure, every data overwrite. Marcus Velt, once listed as the original systems architect, then again, 2 years later, as a reassigned systems auditor, this time under an alias, Michael Varys. The alias never appeared in formal DEA records, but it did appear in every known case where Xeno had been used to delete or redirect data. Alana spoke quietly. He didn't just operate the network, he built the engine. Naomi's voice was low, flat, and now he's waiting for us in Houston. Salgado looked over. Why? Why wait? Alana stared at the wreckage on the screen, the digital confession of a system that had devoured itself. Because he doesn't think we'll do it, she said. Because he thinks we'll flinch. Because bringing him in means exposing all of this to the world. Admitting the house wasn't just dirty, it was burning. And no one noticed. Karen looked up. And if he's right, Alana didn't blink. Then we burn it ourselves and build it right. She turned to Naomi and Salgado. Prep the strike team, quiet. I want boots on the ground in 8 hours. Full blackout. No communications. No leaks. We find that meeting point, and we end this. Naomi gave a short nod. And if he fights? Alana's voice was stone. Then we finish what he started. 3 weeks later, Alana Brooks stood beneath the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol, right hand raised, surrounded by silence, not fear, but reverence. Every seat in the oversight chamber was full. Behind her, the seal of the Justice Department. Before her, 13 stunned lawmakers, bipartisan in name, but united in disbelief. The truth had come out. The files decrypted, the names named. Alana lowered her hand. Saturday adjusted the microphone. My name is Alana Brooks, she said. I serve as director of the Drug Enforcement Administration. Her voice was steady, unshaken. And I'm not here just as a federal officer. I'm here as the woman who was falsely arrested by 2 of our own. That arrest didn't just reveal misconduct. It exposed a network, one not built on ideology, but on silence. This wasn't a rogue faction. It was the logical result of a policy we let rot under red tape, denial, and silence. Alana Brooks stood before Congress, the folder before her thick with names, budgets, and programs twisted into shadows of their intent. She spoke for nearly 2 hours, methodically detailing how Operation Holdback began as a tool for intelligence, was hijacked from within, and transformed into a laundering machine hidden inside federal law enforcement. She named the architecture, she named the loopholes, and she named the man who built it, Marcus Velt. The room was silent when she finished, but she wasn't done. She closed the folder. This wasn't just a structural failure, she said, her voice even. It was a moral one, because for every redacted line, there was a victim. And for every silence, we now carry the responsibility to speak. The silence that followed wasn't fear, it was respect. Then came the first round of applause, then another. It wasn't political, it was human. Within days, a federal sweep began. No press conferences, no countdowns, just precision. Federal marshals, DOJ auditors, and Internal Affairs launched sealed operations across 6 states. Officers were arrested during shift changes. Some fled, some surrendered without a word. In Baton Rouge, a precinct commander tried to burn evidence in a locker room. In Phoenix, 2 supervisors were arrested during roll call. By the end of the week, 34 officers were federally indicted. 21 accepted plea deals to expose laundering routes and financial backchannels. 12 resigned before charges could be filed. 6 took their own lives. But one name remained, Marcus Velt. He was arrested inside a private storage compound near Houston. buried beneath shell companies and false IDs. It wasn't a safe house. It was a command nest. Walls lined with high-end servers, encrypted routers, analog radio gear, and 3 real passports laid neatly on his desk. American, Panamanian, Serbian, all authentic, all used. He didn't fight. Didn't reach for the gun taped under the table. Didn't touch the biometric deadbolt behind him. He just sat there, waiting, like he'd scheduled this. When Alana entered the room, flanked by her team, he lifted his head. A faint smile curved across his face. Dry, mechanical, like punctuation on a story he thought he wrote. "You finally made it," he said. "About time?" Alana didn't smile back. She didn't even move. She stared at him, not with anger, but with clarity. The weight of everything he'd corrupted hung between them. "You built a machine that devoured people," she said, "and you built it from inside an oath." Velt tilted his head slightly. His smile tightened. "No," he said, "I built a mirror, and I just kept it clean." She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped to the desk, picked up the ring of keys beside the passports, the ones that unlocked his vaults, his data, and his empire. Without a word, she handed them to the agents behind her. "Black transport," she ordered. "No delay. I want him in federal isolation within the hour." The agents moved in. One cuffed him, the other swept him for hidden transmitters. Velt stood on his own, calm, deliberate. Even now, surrounded and restrained, he moved like a man who still believed he was in control. As they led him out, he turned one last time. "The system will survive this, Director," he said, quiet, almost kind. Alana met his gaze. "That's the point," she said. "Not the version you built, the one we fix." He said nothing, and when the door closed behind him, it didn't sound like retreat. It sounded like closure. The polished floor reflected her footsteps, but no one clapped as Alana Brooks walked its length. No team waited outside. No congratulatory applause. What followed Marcus Velt's arrest wasn't celebration. It was reconstruction. Within days, a federal strike force of independent auditors, forensic analysts, and IT specialists dismantled every thread of Xeno's architecture, not shut down, not paused, erased. Its buried root protocols, once hidden beneath decades of clearance codes, were documented, decrypted, and incinerated, under direct oversight, in full transparency. But Alana knew something deeper. You can't just remove rot, you have to replace it. And so, Lamar was born, not from politics, but from necessity. A system with no central override, no manual loophole, and no badge that could hide behind privilege. It was designed by whistleblowers, compliance experts, and forensic coders. Its sole mission: make sure no arrest, no transfer, no disappearance, no piece of evidence could ever go unchallenged again. It didn't echo upward. It pressed inward. The name Lamar wasn't chosen by committee. It was chosen by Alana, alone. And when she submitted it for official naming, she added one sentence: his name mattered. Let it be the one thing they never lose again. 2 months later, with full federal integration, Naomi Kersey stood at the head of the newly formed Office of Internal Shielding, appointed without opposition, not to observe, to act. Her first order: a full audit of every fusion task force connected to Operation Holdback. Her second: reopen every whistleblower case ever dismissed under lack of evidence or internal miscommunication. She didn't give a long speech at her swearing in. She didn't need to. The thick stack of files she carried said everything that needed to be said. Weeks later, Alana visited the federal detention facility, not as a figurehead, not for cameras, as a witness. Maddox and Calloway sat in separate units. No contact, no communication, no control. She didn't sit. She didn't shout. She stood between the reinforced windows and spoke like someone with nothing left to prove. Whatever you thought this was, it's over. The network is gone. The channels you protected are severed. Your allies have either flipped, disappeared, or turned on each other. Velt is in black isolation. And Xeno isn't offline. It's extinct, no backups, no reboot, no keys. They didn't reply. Calloway looked away, empty. Maddox glared, twitching with defiance that no longer had teeth. She let the silence fall. Let it crush what little delusion they had left. "No one's coming for you," she added quietly. "No signal, no extraction, no fix." She turned and walked out. No words exchanged. Behind her, the reinforced door closed, not like a cell, but like a sentence. Outside, a camera crew caught her exit. They didn't call her name, didn't ask for comment. They just filmed a woman walking out of a place where truth had been silenced for years, carrying nothing but herself and the certainty that it would be silenced no more. That footage didn't run as breaking news. It ran as a closing chapter. Months later, sunlight streamed through the atrium of the new DEA training facility, casting warm light across the polished floor where rows of recruits stood at attention. The building had changed, not just its design, its purpose. It no longer preserved outdated systems under the weight of tradition. It was now a space rebuilt on what had been earned at great cost. Justice was no longer a slogan, it was practiced. And at the front of the room, beneath the revised federal seal, one detail stood out. 3 new words: truth, oversight, integrity. Words carved not into stone, but into the culture Alana Brooks helped rebuild. Accountability, oversight, integrity. Alana Brooks stepped up to the podium with quiet purpose. She wasn't just facing a room of future agents. She was facing the truth of what it now meant to wear a badge in the world they'd rebuilt. She didn't read from a script. She didn't need notes. Everything that needed to be said already lived in the work, and in the silence the system had once demanded. "I'm not here to welcome you," she began, her voice composed and unwavering. "I'm here to remind you, this agency doesn't exist to grant power. It exists to carry responsibility." She let her gaze move across the room, not to intimidate, but to make sure they understood silence would no longer protect the wrong people. "The moment you put on this uniform," she continued, "you are not above the law. You are beneath its full weight." The years of impunity were over. The reforms were no longer theory. They were active, living, tracking every decision, every step, without exception. "We didn't rebuild this place to look new," she said. "We rebuilt it to be new. The days of buried audits and whispered immunity are gone. What we do now, we do under a light that doesn't blink. If you're here for the right reasons, that light will protect you. If you're not, it will expose you." There was no applause. There didn't need to be. The truth hung in the air, undeniable, unshaken, earned. Behind her, a screen flickered to life. It didn't show graphics or slogans. It showed truth. First, a classroom. Her niece leaning across a desk, sharing a laugh with a friend. A child who once lived under threat from a broken system, now thriving in one finally rebuilt. Then, precincts once tainted, now restructured. New leadership, logged actions, evidence trails reviewed, not ignored. Then, silent footage of former officers, those who once operated above scrutiny, now led away in handcuffs. The same titles, but no protection left to hide behind. And finally, Naomi Kersey, standing before a Lamar terminal. Her hand hovered above the activation key. The moment the system came online across the country, no celebration, no speeches, just function. Clean, constant, incorruptible. Alana left the stage without ceremony. She walked the halls of a building that no longer echoed with quiet unease, but with the presence of structured change. Agents and analysts passed her with nods of recognition, not out of reverence, but respect. She entered her office. The view hadn't changed, but the world outside had. Her desk was cleared, not from emptiness, but readiness. No awards on the walls, no photos. The work wasn't something you framed, it was something you continued. A quiet knock came at the door. A junior staffer stepped in, placed a sealed folder on her desk, and stepped out without a word. No tension, no urgency. She opened it. A final audit report. The last department under investigation. Passed. Full compliance. No red flags, no anomalies, no vanishing evidence, no protected predators. Just a closed case. Just proof. She closed the folder slowly. Set it down with quiet satisfaction. The system wasn't perfect, but for the first time in a long time, it was working. Outside, the city moved beneath a clear sky. Life, steady, uninterrupted, and for the first time in years, Alana allowed herself to exhale. No more waiting for the next shadow. No more hidden adversaries. The machine that once consumed from within had been dismantled, and in its place stood something worth trusting. She didn't look out the window for answers. She looked out to simply recognize what it meant, to reach the end of something that once seemed impossible to stop. Justice didn't arrive with a moment of triumph. It arrived with persistence, with risk, with truth that refused to stay quiet. And now, it was done. Not paused, not pending, finished. If you found this story powerful, share it with someone who still believes change is impossible. And if you're ready for another one, I've picked 2 just for you. They're coming up next. Don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.